after surviving 2 motions of no confidence against her. Johannesburg Mayor Dr. Mpho Phalatse is set to face another one today. To talk about her chances of survival and reasons behind these frequent motions, I'm joined now by the Democratic Alliance's Cilliers Brink. Mr. Brink, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time. Why do you think Dr. Mpho Phalatse will survive this 3rd motion of no confidence?
Well, Dan, unfortunately, it's not clear at all that Dr. Phalatse will survive. There have been several attempts by the ANC and their allies to remove her from power, to dislodge the coalition government. And in the past few weeks, there have been attempts by the DA and our coalition partners to talk to the Patriotic Alliance to somehow get them back into the coalition so that we can strengthen the coalition against these motions of no confidence. Now, as you know, last year, the Patriotic Alliance broke out of that coalition, effectively bringing it to an end, and then made a deal with the ANC. That didn't work out for them, and so in the past few weeks, we have been in negotiations with the Patriotic Alliance in an attempt to bring them back, as I mentioned. Obviously, the DA has been very reticent about this. There are serious concerns about the Patriotic Alliance. They've betrayed us in the past, not just in Joburg, but in Western Cape municipalities as well. And we're also concerned about what the Patriotic Alliance says about itself. The way that Gayton McKenzie says that he doesn't really care about principles and policies, but that he's in it to get the most positions and favors for Patriotic Alliance politicians. So the DA put our conditions in those negotiations, which I'm happy to discuss with you. But unfortunately, it seems that the Patriotic Alliance has not changed its ways. It's also not clear that it ever stopped negotiating with the ANC, and those negotiations have broken down.
Now, the Patriotic Alliance is also saying today, in the person of Gayton McKenzie, speaking to one of our reporters, I don't know if you've heard that earlier by Mr. Brink, I will be playing it shortly. They are saying in a nutshell that the moves or the attempts to remove Dr. Phalatse from office are not about other political parties, but about the infighting within yourselves as the DA, since she raised her hand to be a leader of the DA.
There's no basis for that. In these negotiations, the DA was willing to make significant concessions to bring the Patriotic Alliance on board. And Dan, to answer the crisp question, the reason these negotiations have failed and the reason the Patriotic Alliance is again making a deal with the ANC is because we couldn't match the price that they were demanding. And that price will significantly compromise effective government. It's got nothing to do with the internal politics of the DA.
What's the price? What's the price, Mr. Brink? What's the price?
So let's start with our conditions. We said that we couldn't place the PA in a significantly stronger position than before they sold out to the ANC, because that would effectively reward their past bad faith and guarantee their bad faith in future. The other thing we said is we couldn't entrust any of the vulnerable departments, the departments that are especially vulnerable to patronage politics in Joburg, to the Patriotic Alliance. Their price was not just 2 seats on the mayoral committee, they also demanded economic development. It is a portfolio that the Patriotic Alliance held when they had a coalition with the ANC in the past. And in fact, the ANC mayor fired the Patriotic Alliance MMC because he said he improperly interfered in tenders and processes. So there was a turf war between the ANC and the Patriotic Alliance over economic development. And in those circumstances, the DA could not entrust in good conscience such a department to the Patriotic Alliance. We really have to be better than the ANC. It doesn't help us setting ourselves up in a way to replicate the errors of the ANC.
What are your options?
The Patriotic Alliance.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Brink, just to come in the interest of time, what are your options as a DA if Dr. Phalatse is ousted as mayor of Johannesburg?
Well, we will field her again as a candidate because, Dan, as you know, in Ekurhuleni, for example, our mayoral candidate was voted out, but then the other parties, including the ANC, could not agree on who to field as a candidate. So we will try our best to take responsibility for the situation. Unfortunately, the reality is that the DA and the multi-party coalition in Johannesburg does not have an absolute majority. We tried our best to bring the Patriotic Alliance on board again on reasonable terms. They are not open to reasonable terms. It is clear that they want to practice the same extortionist politics that they did in the past. And so we cannot govern or attain a majority at any price. We have to be reasonable. We have to protect the integrity of the coalition, and we have to make sure that where we govern, we do so in a way that is different from the ANC. Because if we don't, if we repeat their mistakes, people will not just lose faith in us, they will lose faith in the mechanism of coalitions.
Yeah, and the residents of Johannesburg just want services to be delivered, and their goings on and all these challenges you are facing inside the council are not helpful. Now, if just who else would you be prepared to work with? I mean, nobody got an outright majority in the November 2021 local government elections, as you've just said, and your problem child in this current coalition seems to be the Patriotic Alliance. Who else could you work with, or this is it?
Well, it's a fairly broad coalition as it is, Dan. I think it's about 9 or 8 parties. It's probably one of the biggest coalitions in terms of plurality of parties. So what there is currently is, through lots of efforts, many nights, rounds of negotiations, offers, counter offers, this is what we are able to achieve. And it's not clear, as I mentioned, that any other grouping or any other party can get more seats. It's not clear what the EFF, for example, will do. The DA has been clear we are not going to include the EFF in any coalition. It's not clear what even the Patriotic Alliance will do. At this stage, there are rumors that they've already struck some kind of a deal with the ANC.
What about the Action SA? What about Action SA? Are they not in the picture here?
No, I assume that they are part of our coalition. They haven't left it yet. I mean, the Action SA and Michael Bonamont has made several statements, attacks on the DA, but we have a written coalition agreement. And in terms of that agreement, the coalition partners support a DA candidate for mayor.
Okay, so the best outcome, so the best outcome for this latest round of motion of no confidence against your fellow member, the Dr. Mpho Phalatse, would be her to retain her office. If she loses it, you say you're going to field her again when the election comes up for a mayor.
As I mentioned, that's exactly what happened to Tanya Campbell. The motion of no confidence in her as Ekurhuleni mayor was also not motivated by any serious concerns about governance, service delivery, a program of action. It was politicking. The fact of the matter is the ANC wants to cause as much chaos in these coalitions as possible. It wants to divide the coalition partners. But then when it comes to actually taking responsibility for governance, not even the ANC can field a winning candidate. So the DA will continue to fight for Joburg residents for the best possible services, but we can also not be dishonest and say we'll pay any price that Gayton McKenzie wants, any demands that they have as the Patriotic Alliance, because that would set us up for failure and that would compromise our ability to keep our promise to voters.